everybody. This is Susie again from the Juliet Hampton Morgan Memorial Library. As you may know, we've got several rotating regular programs that we do here. Cook from Our Books is one of them, which is where we cook from one of our cookbooks in the collection and share with you the recipe. Very recently we did a Cook from Our Books Dog Edition, actually 2 videos where we made dog treats. And I love dogs, but I'm a cat lady, so I knew I needed to do a cat video, so I am doing Crafty Cats, which is part of our Crafty series. And today we're going to be doing a very, very easy project, very forgiving project that will absolutely help you get through some of your scrap stash, and that is a catnip-filled kick toy for kitty cats. And they can be different sizes, different shapes. Easiest shape is either a rectangle or a square, of course, but there's several steps in the process, and I'm going to go through this lovely bit of chaos in front of me and share that with you, and let's get started. Okay, so we're going to get started on our catnip kick toy. If you sew at all, I'm sure you have scraps that you accumulate, little pieces that you don't need anymore, that are left over from other projects, so on and so forth. And this project is a really, really good scrap buster, which will help get through some of those fabrics. It's also very forgiving because you're making it for a cat, and a cat does not care if your colors match. A cat doesn't care if your seams are crooked, or even if your fabric is backwards, if you accidentally sew the wrong sides together. A cat doesn't care. As a matter of fact, if it's filled with catnip, it doesn't matter at all. The cat will enjoy it. So I've got 3 different scrap piles with me today. I have a pile here of Christmas themed scraps that just acquired. These are general scraps, all different sizes and shapes. And then these are scraps that are bits that have been sewn together already from previous projects that I didn't need for whatever reason. Ultimately, what you want to do for this project is have a square of fabric or a rectangle. You can piece it together from little pieces that you've already sewn, piece it together from small pieces, or piece it together from a large piece, an existing large piece. So for example, this is a rather big piece in my stash, so I could cut a rectangle or square and just use that. This is a good example of that. This is just one piece of fabric that I have made the toy out of. Both of these were pieced fabrics, and as you can see, I'm not that bothered by the stitching being shown on this. Again, this is for a cat. It's probably going to get busted open with their claws or their teeth and get drooled on, possibly puked on. It doesn't matter. It can have an exposed seam, and it can have mismatching seams. It's a really good project for beginning sewers if you've already built up some scrap. Okay, so now that we have established what scraps are and the different types of scraps that you may have available and that I have available, this is what you're going to need for the project. Of course, you want to ultimately make a square or a rectangle out of your scraps. Scraps you probably already have on hand. You are also going to need pieces of ribbon, preferably gross grain ribbon, but it doesn't have to be. Even like the satin ribbon and things like that will work for this. You don't need big pieces. As a matter of fact, you're just going to have small little pieces sticking out of your toy at the end. So you're talking maybe 4 or 5 inches, or even smaller, depending if you just want to make a tiny little ribbon at the end. So if you've sewn or whatever, or done lanyards or masks, which everybody seems to be doing these days, you're probably going to have some scrap ribbon around. So gather that. You will also need some polyfill. This is just cotton fluff. Essentially, you can buy it by a huge bag, and it's going to last you a long time, and you use that to stuff your toys. You're also going to need some catnip, preferably the good stuff, as it were. This is organic catnip. I just purchased this on Amazon. If you're growing your own, great. You can grow it and dry it. That's actually a little more potent for the kitties, but store-bought is perfectly fine. Also, you're going to need a sewing machine. You can do this by hand. So sewing machine, doesn't matter what color thread you use though, even though, you know, for the same reason we mentioned before, because the cats don't care if it's a purple project but you're using bright orange thread. You are also going to need chopsticks or a unsharpened pencil, and this is for poking out corners or poking in fluff into your project. And strangely enough, you're going to need a lighter. So if you are a young person trying to do this at home, make sure that you talk with your parents before using this, or do this under supervision from them. And that is the supplies you'll need. So now we're going to get into the construction. So the first one we're going to put together are just some basic strips, and one of our librarian cat dads picked these out to be as horrible as possible color-wise, but the cat does not care, so it's all good. So what I'm going to do is just sew these strips together, right sides together, but again, if you forget and do wrong sides together, it's no big deal. So we're going to cut to a shot right now of me sewing these strips together, and that's the first step. Okay, so I've sewn the strips together, and this would be the point where normally I would say take it to your ironing board, iron your sides down, trim up your sides, make it all perfect and good angles. It's not necessary for this project, so you don't even need the ironing board for this project at all. So good news. Now what we want to do is fashion it into the shape that we're ultimately going to use. So with this one, just given the size of it, I think what I'm going to do is connect it right here. But you could also make it a longer shape and connect it this way. Actually, I think that's a little cuter, and it'd be more snake-like, like this particular one. So I think I'm going to do it this way. So if you had ironed, all these would be facing the same way and it'd be all pretty, but it really doesn't matter. So what you want to start thinking about at this point is your ribbon. And also if you're going to have your ribbon just coming from the ends, or if your ribbon is going to come from the side as well. That's really up to you, how much patience you have for the fiddly work of putting the ribbon in. But you know, even just one side is fine. The cat is going to love it. They're going to be feeling the effects of the catnip anyway, so they're going to be feeling playful. I do want to say this though, not every cat likes catnip, so if you make this and your cat does not respond at all to the catnip, don't feel bad. It's probably not the potency of your catnip, so I would suggest trying to give them a little bit of catnip or a different catnip toy first, just to see how they react to it. But just as a toy, they're probably still going to play with this. Behold the chaos that is crafting. So now we've got our strips put together, and we've decided which way we're going to fold the fabric to make the tube of goodness. And we have very carefully, if you would like, picked out your ribbon that goes. And I'm going to sew the ribbon inside the tube. I'm going to leave one end open so that when I turn it out, the ribbon is exposed, and then I can stuff it with the fluff and the catnip and then sew the final two ribbons in. So my first step is going to be to sew this long seam, just because it's easier. So I will line everything up and get it on the machine. Our long edge and our short edge with our ribbon anchored inside. So now what we're going to do is flip this out. So you make sure that you've got your open end, and then you just flip it, work it through. This is also where you get to see like the final, like the first view of the final look of the project. Definitely eye-catching. Okay. So this is where your chopsticks come in handy. You're going to be using your chopsticks if you had a smaller tube or a smaller square to get the fluff down in every corner. But you can see here where this corner has decided it wants to just stay inside. So you can use your chopsticks or your pencil, whatever you've got, to go in there and make sure your corner is out. But really, once you start putting your polyfill in there, the pressure is gonna fill everything out, so it's not too important. So now what you want to do is take your polyfill and your catnip and start stuffing. And what I do is put a little bit of stuffing and then sprinkle some catnip, and then a little bit of stuffing and sprinkle catnip and fill it up that way. And then at the end here, we are going to sew the ribbon in to close it. And then we go through and burn the ends of the ribbon so that it doesn't fray. So you want to make sure that you stuff down your fluff pretty far in, further than you need, because you want to make sure you have space to sew your ribbon on. As you're sewing your ribbon on, it's going to be a little fiddly. I would suggest using a straight stitch and then transitioning to a zigzag, or even if you start with a zigzag, that is fine. Any kind of decorative stitch is fine. You just want to make sure that your ribbons are anchored in sufficiently. And as you can see here, it's just, like I said, a little bit fiddly to fit everything in and to make sure that it is sewn over, and you want to make sure to backstitch and anchor those things in quite well. And then at the end, give them a little tug, make sure that they're in there sufficiently. So once you've sewn your final bit of ribbon in, of course you want to go back and forth a couple of times just to anchor these ribbons. You want to go through and double check that all of your ribbons are anchored in, so you can just give them a little tug and cut any excess threads that you have, because you don't want those getting caught in Kitty's mouth. So once you get your threads cut off, sort of squeeze it, which will help distribute the fluff inside. Also helps to activate the catnip, the oils in the catnip. To finish this off completely, this is the part where you use your lighter. What you want to do, because of course with ribbon, as you can see, this is already starting to fray. As the kitty plays with it and it gets kicked around and knocked under furniture and stuff, it's going to get worse and worse. And you know, you don't want your kitty choking on that or anything like that. So very carefully, you want to burn the end of the ribbon just to melt the fibers at the base so that it doesn't fray any further. And you want to do that on each piece of ribbon. Don't set it down immediately or touch it immediately after you've burned it, because it does stay sort of like molten for a little while. So give it a good 15-20 seconds. Now it's perfectly fine. And so I'm going to go through and burn the rest of these. Occasionally with certain types of ribbon, it'll be just like, oh, fire, and it will take off. So you want to be very conscious of how much you're putting the flame to it, and then be ready to blow out any flare-ups when they occur. So now you have your final kitty kick toy, and that concludes this episode of Crafty Cats. Just a couple notes of warning, if you will. As your kitty plays with this, and unless you've used upholstery fabric, which is fine, you're gonna see holes start to develop. You can patch that a little bit with some super glue, but if you get a major rip and the fluff starts to come through, go ahead and throw this away, and because you don't want the cat eating the fluff, because they're gonna try to eat the catnip that comes out with the fluff, and you don't want them ingesting that at all. Also, if you are one of those crazy people that have both cats and dogs, let the kitty play with this and then put it up on a high shelf somewhere where the dog can't get to, because the doggy will think this is theirs and take it from the kitty and probably destroy it a lot quicker. And that is all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that your kitties enjoy your toys.
No. Hey. Quit. Quit. Sam. No. No. Come back here.